Uh, Ma'am Priya Singh, madam. She is actually a research scholar in IIT Hyderabad. She recently submitted her thesis. She did her BTech in Anna University, Chennai in 2009, and she has industrial experience also. She worked in Innovation Communication Systems, Hyderabad, over 2 years, and her thesis title is CMOS Circuit Design Techniques for Microscale Thermal Energy Scavenging, and she is looking forward for completing her voice. Her research interests are power management circuits and design of energy efficient low power integrated circuits and systems. So this is actually session 4 of this workshop, and today's topic is this integrated circuits for microscale energy scavenging. Uh, Ma'am,
Yes,
yeah, please
Patsanti,
start.
thank you for the intro. Let me share my presentation. So is my presentation visible?
Not yet, ma'am.
Okay. Now is it visible?
Yeah, it is coming. Yeah, it is
Okay.
visible, ma'am.
Okay. So welcome to everyone who is attending this session. Today I would like to talk about integrated circuits for microscale energy scavenging. I'll just give an overview of what is energy scavenging and the related circuits. So today we will be discussing on initially on what is energy scavenging. I'll try to define energy scavenging in the circuit design terms and what are the applications of energy scavenging, the types of energy scavenging and the different transducers that are used for scavenging energy. Then I'll talk about how can we scavenge energy from the ambience, and under that topic we'll be discussing about what will be the basic architecture of a system which we can design to scavenge energy from the ambience, and what are the major building blocks that you will need to do that, what are the types of circuits that you will be designing to scavenge energy, what are the challenges in the circuit design perspective to scavenge energy from the ambience, and finally I'll give you a design example, which is a thermal energy harvesting system, which is a mixed signal design application. What is the basic architecture, what are the circuit components involved in that, and so on. So if you have any doubts, anyone is having any doubts, please feel free to stop me in between, or we can discuss at the end of the session as you wish. So initially we can see what is energy scavenging. So energy, for whatever energy, for whatever power we need to power up the devices or equipments around us, we need energy. But that energy can be coming from a source that is generated or consciously generated energy source, like burning. So normally we get energy from burning fuels. So here energy harvesting refers to the energy which is generated as a byproduct of some other process. Let's say a machinery is running, or a device is operating. So when in the main process of its operation, it may generate waste heat. So we can make use of that waste heat, generate or extract energy from that waste heat and convert into usable form, and we can use it to operate devices like electronic devices or wireless sensor node or IoT devices. It is that kind of energy uh, harvesting or energy scavenging that we are referring to here. So essentially, we are capturing energy from the environment, converting it into usable form, because most of the times the form of energy that is available in the ambience will not be in the form of electrical energy, will not be in the required voltage or current level that the devices that we are talking about will operate. So we have to convert so we have to extract the energy, convert it into usable form in order to make use of it to operate to be usable to operate the devices. So here in this hope you can see my cursor blinking. So in that we have small amounts of energy that are around us, like solar energy, thermal energy, vibration energy, RF energy. All these forms of energy are the forms of energy that we can make use of or we can extract from in order to convert it into usable form that we need. So initially we will be converting them into electrical energy, and we can use that to operate devices like so here when we are talking about the devices that can be operated, we are not talking about powering an entire house or running an entire factory. We are not talking about that level of energy, because for that we need to really burn the fuel, get the energy from that, and integrate it with the power grid that is currently in use. So we are not talking about that form of energy usage. We are talking about very micro scales of energy which are available in our ambience, like waste heat, light from the sun, or the vibrational energy that we get, which is generated as a byproduct of operations like automotive functioning, or human walking, or body motions, and the RF energy that is transmitted by the wireless devices. So from these energy sources, we can harvest energy, and we can operate some electronic devices like let's say your watch, your wireless sensor node, or your health monitoring device that you are wearing on your body. So that's the context of energy harvesting that we are talking about here. So as I was telling, the obvious ambient energy sources that are available here are solar, thermal, and vibration, and also RF energy. So how much power can we expect from these sources? So initially, if you see, we are from all these light, vibrational, thermal, and RF. Obviously, solar energy is the highest energy provider. Up to 10 microwatt, 15 milliwatt of power can be harvested from solar energy. And if you are talking about indoor light that we are getting, from that we can maximum generate 500 microwatt only. And if you come to vibrational, it depends upon the vibrational frequency of the transducer, of the piezoelectric transducers that are used for vibrational energy harvesting. They can give up to 20 milliwatt of power. If you consider thermal energy, it can give up to 10 milliwatt only. And another drawback is that the voltage that the transducer will be generating is very low, and it will be as low as even 10 millivolt, 5 millivolt of that range. And then next comes the RF energy. RF energy is the source of energy which can give the least power among the other sources, but it is widely available. Nowadays, if you're talking about RF energy, it's actually really pervasive. It is everywhere around us. So in that case, RF energy is an advantageous, but the power that it can deliver is very low. So where can we use this energy scavenging effectively? So basically, as I was talking about the devices that can be operated with energy harvesting as a power source, I was telling the small electronic devices that can be powered. So normally, if you see, generally we power those with batteries. So as you will be thinking, like, why can't we use batteries itself? Why should we use this energy scavenging if that is of not, if they are not giving a very high power? So if you see the applications that we are targeting, let's take your home. So right now we are all talking about making all our homes smart. We want cities to be smart, we want homes to be smart. So what makes a home or city smart are the wireless sensor nodes. So you are sensing the temperature, you are sensing pressure, you are sensing whether your door is open, you are sensing whether your water is leaking. So everywhere we are using wireless sensor nodes. So if I want, let's say, if I want to make my home smart, I will need at least 100 sensors inside my home to make it completely smart, or at least partially smart. So we are talking about 100 batteries minimum. And if you consider operating all those sensor nodes continuously for whole day 24 by 7, then you can imagine how much batteries you will need in a month, or in a week, or in a year. If you consider the amount of batteries that you will be using, it's really large. So the replenishing of the batteries, maintenance of the batteries, you have to change the battery. You have to, maybe your sensor that you have kept for you have kept for sensing your water leakage, maybe somewhere remote near your tank or somewhere you can't reach. So if you want to change the battery of that sensor every month, then you have to really go to that remote place, change the battery every month, which is not advisable, and nobody prefers to do that. So this is a simple example where you can see that the usage of batteries need to be made obsolete, so that they can be, those sensors can be maintenance free, or it's like plug and run, for it will be working for life. If you have that option, then why don't we use energy scavenging rather than using a battery? And that are the those are the applications that will come under convenience, like wearables. Like if you are a sports freak, or if you're an athlete, you will need to monitor your health, monitor the your fitness level every time. So you will be wearing a watch, or you will be wearing a sensor which monitors your heartbeat. So for all those devices you will be using a battery. Also, so in those cases, let's say if you are able to harvest energy from your own body, then you will not need a battery to power your sensor. The sensor will be running always. Every time you wear the sensor, it will be up and running from the thermal energy that is generated by your body. And the next application comes where the place where the sensor is kept is remote, like an oil rig. Oil rig is far inside the sea. So there, if you have sensors, it's not always possible to maintain the battery level of the sensor there. Pipelines which are running all over our country in remote places, and you can see the implantables that are coming up in the medical field these days, like implantable pacemakers sort of. So those devices, they are also running currently from battery. So as far as I know, right now they need to be the batteries of the pacemakers that are implanted internally need to be through surgical methods. You have to remove the battery and replenish it every 2 years or so. So in those cases, if those devices can be operated from the energy that is available in the ambience, then there is no need to change the battery. So you need not worry about where you are placing your sensor. And for environmental awareness, so here comes the need when you have to put the sensors in large numbers. Let's say smoke detectors, automotives, in industrial factories. In all these places you need thousands and thousands of sensors to be kept everywhere. So if you have to replenish the batteries of all those sensors, it doesn't make the use very favorable to the user. So in these are the applications where you can really think about energy scavenging as a boon. So why do we need to eliminate the battery if they are coming? They are now really cheap. They come in small sizes, big sizes, and all the sizes you want. And if you are really using it cautiously, then the batteries may last for more days or more weeks. But if you see the current scenario is that the talk is about IoT, or Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is powered by wireless sensor nodes. So if you see the number of IoT devices that are coming in the market for the last 8 years, from 2012 to 2020, you can see that from 8.7 it has jumped to 50.1. So it is in billions. If you can see the quantity, 50 billion devices are coming up in 2020. So where you will go for the batteries that you need to power up all these IoT devices? So if you see the possibilities of IoT, it is great. It is very it has lot of possibilities to offer. But due to the limitations of battery, only 20% of the potential of IoT will be used, and 80% is denied. So the batteries have the devices that are operated with batteries have serious limitations based on the performance, the safety, the way it has to be disposed will cause environmental issues. So these are the issues that you can think about when you want to favor energy harvesting. So it's just the slide just shows the crux of what I was talking about. Like the energy harvesting holds the promise of being green, sustainable, maintenance free, and it's virtually infinite source of power because it will never get depleted. So if you consider the applications and the power level that the sources can give and the power level that the devices needs, if you see a trade-off, you can see that the RF and human movement generated vibrations co- causes, I mean, gives a very least amount of power, and the energy consumption, the energy that is generated from this RF and human movement can only power a wristwatch or a RFID tag, like low power applications. And if you go up the ladder and if you see the outdoor light power generation, we can see that it can generate up to 1 watt, and it can power up a GSM transceiver, the RF devices that are used for wireless transmission. So this is a general architecture of an IoT node. So as you can see, if you forget about the transducer part here, here you will be having a battery in a normal device. You will be having a transducer if it is an energy harvesting powered or an autonomous device. So as a wireless sensor node will be having a sensor. It can be a biomedical sensor, home automation device, or a surveillance sensor, and you will have a data processing module which will contain signal conditioning circuits like an instrumentation amplifier, ADC, and it will have a memory to store the data, the controller that controls the signal acquisition system data handling, and also a Bluetooth transmitter or any RF transmitter for the communication purpose. So uh, the target of the energy harvesting power management unit is, so in the if it was a battery, this system will be replaced by battery. So now the energy, if you have to design an energy harvesting power management unit, you have to make sure that from the ambience you are harvesting energy, you are converting it into a form that is usable by this node, by the circuits of this node, and it is the regulated at the voltage that these circuits will work. And also you have to take care of the changes in the energy level that may cause due to ambient changes, like light may change from day to evening. If you see, the light may change, so the energy that you will be harvesting from a solar cell may vary from daytime to evening time. So but still you have to make sure that your circuits work or your node is functional. So in that way, you have to have a power management device, power management operation also inbuilt in the energy harvesting power management unit. So this slide just gives you a sense of what it is like to have an IoT node which is powered from an energy harvesting unit. So here I just want to give a feel of numbers, like what is the power level that we are talking about, so that you can have a real sense of what energy harvesting can help you with. So if you see, there is an IoT node which is having. So I'll be telling about this the operation of this in detail in the upcoming slides. So I'll just brush up through these slides to give you a sense. Let's say I have an IoT node which is having a signal acquisition system, which is having an AFE and ADC. I have a microcontroller inbuilt in the device, in the IoT node, and I have a transmission unit. And as you might be knowing, like IoT nodes have a power profile of in different power modes in order to save power, because if even if they are working in batteries, to save the life of battery, to lengthen the time for which the battery will work, they have to work in really low power. They have to really ensure that the IoT node designer should really ensure that the power consumed by each of the circuit or and the node as itself together as a whole should consume very less power. So they mainly work in three modes of operation. One is sleep mode, another is active mode, other is transmission mode. These are the general modes of operation of an IoT node. So in sleep mode, what happens is the only quiescent power will be consumed by the node. All the operations will be in a power save mode. There will not be any transmission happening from the IoT node. Only the signal acquisition system will be just on. It will not be operational. It will be just on. So that it will consume the least amount of power. So in this case, if you see the AFE ADC microcontroller Bluetooth, whichever I have considered for this study, the part number I have given. So if you see the data sheet of these devices, you can see that in sleep mode, the AFE consumes 100 nanoamps of power, current at 2 volt supply voltage. So if you calculate the what is the power consumption of the AFE and ADC, because microcontroller and Bluetooth will be off in this mode. So in sleep mode it is 10 microamps of current, and for active mode it will be what happens is the signal conditioning circuit, the and the microcontroller will be operational, but the signal will not be transmitted. The transmission block will be in off mode. So during that time the signal will be acquired, whatever signal. It can be a temperature sensor, it can be a pressure sensor, or it can be ECG data if it is a health monitoring device. It can be anything. The signal will be acquired, sampled, and stored. So here the current consumed or the power consumed by the device will be more than whatever is in the sleep mode, will be lesser than whatever is in the transmission mode. In the transmission mode, it is fully active. The transmission happens. The collected data will, whichever is stored in the memory, will be which will be conditioned by the signal acquisition device. It will be sent by the Bluetooth device or the transmitter device, which consumes the Bluetooth device or the transmission device consumes the highest amount of power among other devices, other blocks. And in this case study case, it consumes 7.3 milliwatt at 1 megabits per second transmission rate. So this is the kind of power that we need. So if you are designing an energy harvesting IC, this is the power level that you should be ensuring that you can harvest, you can extract from the ambient, you can convert into usable form and provide to the load. So this will be the load profile when you are designing a energy harvesting IC. So here it just in this table it just shows the some works that they have, that the researchers have carried out. If an IoT node is powered from thermal energy or RF energy, how much will be the power consumed by each of these process, and what will be the power consumption that we should be targeting. So till now we were talking about what is energy scavenging, how is it helping us, what are the different applications of energy harvesting, and what are the power levels that we are talking about, and what is the power level that our IC should be targeting. Now we will see how we can design a circuit to scavenge energy. So if you see the energy harvesting systems, following will be the critical units in the design. So initially we have an energy processing circuit, like it can be a sensor, actuator, transducer. That is the initial starting point of an energy harvesting system. Next comes the power delivery circuits. So here we are talking about the converters. So the energy that is what the transducer does is it converts one form of energy to other. So let's say in case of light energy, let's say we are harvesting solar energy, we are talking about the light energy being converted to electrical energy. So when it is converted to electrical energy, it will not be the voltage level or the current level that we require. Let's say if you are getting 1 lux of solar light, then maybe you will be getting 1 volt of voltage will be the output of the transducer. But maybe my wristwatch or my wireless sensor node will not work with 1 volt supply. It may need 1.8 volt or 3.3 volt supply. So who will convert from 1 volt supply to 1.8 volt or 3.3 volt supply is the converter. So it can be a DC-DC converter, if the transducer output is of DC form of energy of voltage. If it is RF or piezoelectric energy harvesting, then we are talking about AC form of transducer. Then we need rectifiers. So AC to DC converters are required in that case for inside the energy harvesting system. Next comes the conditioning circuits. Like maybe you have converted from 1 volt to 1.8 or 3.3 volt, but we have to not only the conversion is important, but we also have to ensure that the voltage that is supplied is regulated. So we need regulators to ensure this conditioning. And the next concern about energy harvesting system is what we are designing is a power supply system which is harvesting energy from the ambience and giving to the load. So who should be powering the circuit itself? The energy harvesting system should be powered from some supply, right? So who is powering that is, so here we have to understand that all the energy harvesting systems are autonomous, so they have to run with their own power. So they should ensure that the power that they themselves consume is very less, so that the whatever they are harvesting or whatever they're extracting from the ambience, most of it is going out and supplying or supporting the load. So for that we have to ensure that the design of energy harvesting circuits are of very low power, ultra low power. For that we use power gating, subthreshold circuit design techniques to ensure that all these circuits are operating in ultra low power. And another critical thing to be noted is like the flexibility or the occurrence of energy in the ambience is not constant. It will vary, like as I was talking before, the light. Let's say if you're harvesting solar energy, the whatever you are getting in the daytime, you will not get in the evening. If it is in the thermal energy case, the energy that will be available will keep on varying. We can't ensure that constant thermal energy, constant solar or constant vibration exists with respect to the transducer, so that we are getting a constant source of power. So what you will need uh, some intermediate storage unit where which you can use when, if you're having an extra power coming up, you can store that energy in that intermediate storage unit, and you can use up that energy when you are when there is a deficiency of availability of energy. So definitely you need an intermediate storage unit in case of an energy harvesting system. So how you will integrate this intermediate energy harvesting system to the converter or the conditioning circuit is yet another critical point in designing energy harvesting IC. So this is a general architecture of an energy harvesting system. So as you can see, the source can be a solar cell, a thermoelectric generator, or a TEG which harvests thermal energy, or it can be a piezoelectric transducer which can harvest vibrational energy, or it can be a RF transducer which harvests RF energy. And the load can be a wireless sensor node, a wearable device, a health monitor, an implantable device, or like that sort. Now inside, this is your energy harvesting system. What will you be having inside this IC is a switch to mode power converter and a controller. These are the top level blocks that you can say when you're talking about an energy harvesting system. So the converter can be of various types, like there are charge pump based converters, there is inductor based switch mode converters like buck converter, boost converter. So in that you will be having a charger, which is, so here the you have an intermediate energy storage in between. So the intermediate energy storage will be charged by the charger unit from the energy that is available from the ambience. The source, the transducers convert into electrical energy, the charger uses that energy to charge this intermediate energy storage. And then it is given to the power conditioning circuits like the regulators, so that it can give the constant voltage output to the loads. And inside the controller you mainly have a switch control, like switched mode power converters will have the switches which need to be controlled from clocks that are generated as required by the by the application. So for generating those clocks, you will have a switch controller, and you will have auxiliary circuits like oscillators, reference generators, uh, to aid the controller in doing its job. And if you see, there is a interesting block here called cold startup block. So the operation of this block is, as I was telling before, the energy harvesting system is an autonomous system. It has to find its own power to start functioning, and it has to start functioning, and after that only it can start giving out voltage or power to the load. So who starts the operation of the energy harvesting system is this cold startup. So what it does is, if you have a very minimum input energy available, it will start acting as a converter or the harvester itself. It will use that trickle charge, and it will store that energy. And once that energy is sufficient enough for the whole energy harvesting system to start operation, then the main converter or the main circuit starts operation and starts harvesting. So that is the function of this cold startup unit. So now, so we were till now I was talking about the energy harvesting techniques in general, like what are the basic circuits of energy harvesting system, what is the main functionality of an energy harvesting system, and what you should be keeping in mind when you are designing an energy harvesting system. So next we will see a design example here. So during my PhD research work, I was working on developing thermal energy harvesting integrated circuits. So I'll explain what is it to like an energy harvesting system to harvest energy from thermal energy with from very low voltage, which can give higher output power at that minimum low voltage. So you can see that the first picture shows a conventional thermoelectric generator transducer. This is how a transducer in general will look like. So inside what is inside this transducer is given in the second picture. So the white plates that you are seeing are uh, ceramic substrates, which can which is used to sandwich the semiconductor pellets inside. The black blocks that you can see in between these two plates, two white plates, are semiconductor pellets which are having thermoelectric property. So they are like they are one is p type, one is n type, one is p type, like that. They are arranged in series, and they are sandwiched in between these two plates. So how the thermal energy should be applied, or should the transducer see, is one side should be hot and the other side should be cold. So there should be a temperature difference between these two plates in order for this transducer to generate voltage. So if you have a temperature difference between these two plates, then in these wires, as you can see, the voltage difference will be generated between these two wires. So that voltage that is in the form of electrical energy. Now you can use your harvester to convert that energy, extract that energy to usable form, and power whatever loads you like. So this is a general conventional form of transducer, and it is very interesting to know that the transducer that you see is a very conventional one. And people are so many researchers are trying to devise new kinds of thermoelectric generators, which are not so of hard form or solid form, which are flexible like this, so that you can just attach it to your t-shirt or your hand, so that it can power your watch or mobile or any other uh, device that you are wearing on your body, so that it can harvest energy from your own body heat and it can power your devices. Another example is this watch. So it is having a thermoelectric generator underneath this watch, which is touching the hand skin. So the temperature difference here they are using is the temperature of the human body and the ambient temperature. So you will be aware that the temperature that the human body is having is always higher than the ambient temperature. So we have a temperature difference between the our human body skin and the ambience. So this thermoelectric generator, when placed on your hand, can generate, and if your body is at 37 degrees Celsius and you are having an ambient temperature of 27 degrees Celsius, you can definitely see a voltage at this at these wires, and here they are making use of that voltage to operate this particular watch or the electronics that is attached to it. So here in the next picture, you can see it is an EEG sensor which can read the brain signals, and that is also powered from the heat that is generated by the head of the person. So now we'll see what is in terms of circuits, how can we view this thermoelectric generator transducer. So as I was talking about, talking before, we have thermoelectric legs or pellets, P and N type, placed in. So they are electrically they are in series, and thermally they are in parallel. So what happens is, I'll come to this. So here the charge carriers of the N and P type will be pushed towards the cooler side when heat is applied on one side. Uh, because of that, current happens, and it will form, if you connect, if you take these 2 points of the wires as outside, you can see that there is a potential difference happening. So the materials that are used to make the thermoelectric generators are thermoelectric materials like bismuth, tellurium. So if you want to see it in a circuit perspective, you can model this transducer as a voltage source in series with an internal impedance. So this internal impedance will vary with respect to the make of the transducer. Different transducer providers make different models of transducers or different makes of transducers, and makers of transducers have the internal impedance varying from 5 ohms or 3 ohms to 100 ohms of internal impedance. So it is up to the user to, depending upon whichever application that you want, you can choose the transducer type you need for your particular application. And the voltage source, uh, voltage that is generated depends upon the temperature difference between the plates. If for a generic transducer, if you see, you can for 1 degree Celsius of temperature difference between the plates, you will get 25 millivolt of voltage. So it is as you can imagine, it is very low. The 25 millivolt is very low voltage that you can imagine to use to power any of your loads. But we will see how we can use of this 25 millivolt to get to 1 or 1.8 volt or 3.3 volt that you will need for for powering your loads like IoT devices. So this graph shows the power characteristics of the transducer. So as you can see that as the load current is increasing, the for a given voltage, for a given transducer, the power curve will look like this. So if you connect a load resistor to this transducer, let's say R load, let's say I have a load resistor here to extract the power from this transducer. So you will be aware of the maximum power transfer theorem, which states that when the load resistor is equivalent to this RTEG, at that time you will be extracting maximum power from the source. So that is so for this transducer also, for any transducer, you have to ensure that the load that the transducer sees should have an equivalent impedance which is equivalent to the internal impedance of the transducer itself, so that maximum power will be extracted from the transducer. So extracting maximum power transducer is one of the most critical design aspect that one energy harvesting IC designer will be looking forward to. So if let's say if I want to use TEG as a TEG transducer to harvest energy for, I want to power my IoT device using the energy harvested from the thermal energy that is available from my body heat. So what are the challenges as an IC designer? What are the challenges that I should be looking at? So now as you see for the here the plot shows the voltage generated by the transducers of these three models. So here we have CP20151, CP60133, and G330 series of transducers. So, and the x-axis shows the delta T or the temperature difference between the plates. The plates, I mean, so between these two plates, or between this plate and this plate. So you have a TP, TC cold temperature here, TH hot temperature here. What is the delta T means TH minus TC. That is the delta T that we are talking about in this diagram. So let's say I have that delta T temperature difference between the plates from 0 to 25. A maximum of 25 degrees Celsius also is giving me only 180 millivolt of voltage. So if we see normally the let's say ambient temperature is 25 or 27 degrees Celsius and human body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. If you assume you have only 10 degrees Celsius of delta T between your transducer, and you're having a maximum of 100 millivolt only that is coming out of your transducer. So as an IC designer, you have to really worry about how I will make this, how I will get this 100 millivolt to 1 volt or 1.8 volt or any higher usable voltage level. That is the primary challenge associated with the IC design of a thermal electric energy harvester. And next is the energy efficiency, which comes under how much current the transducer can give. So for a given delta T, the efficiency of the transducer, TEG transducer, is very less when you compare to the other transducers like solar cell or piezo. It's better than RF, but it is much lower. The efficiency of the transducer is much lower when you're talking about the solar or piezo. Now, as I was mentioning before, the transducers that are currently available in the market are the conventional types, that like the white ones that I was showing. They have very low temperature, I mean input impedance, like 0.5 ohms per centimeter square. But since their efficiency is very less and they are of rigid solid form, for many of the applications that we are talking, like wearable electronics and remote placement of sensors or implantable devices powering, or all these applications, we can't use that kind of transducer, and it will make the whole point meaningless. Like we want the system to be fully integratable with the application or with the sensor nodes. So for that we have to so for that the researchers are trying to figure out how differently we can make thermoelectric transducers. So right now they have come up with flexible transducers, and with different materials, with different thermoelectric materials. But the variation is happening in terms of the internal impedance those transducers are having. So if you see thin film TEGs, which are film type of TEGs, flexible TEGs that you can use for wearable applications, the internal resistance is much higher than the conventional transducers. It is around 2632 ohms per centimeter square. And to make it fully integratable with the CMOS devices, so that even the transducer can be integrated along with the energy. Anyway, we are making the energy harvester in CMOS or any other integrated circuit form. So if we can integrate the transducer also with the energy harvester circuit itself, then it will become a really fully integrated energy harvesting solution, which can open up huge possibilities. So some research workers, which is mentioned in the reference 9, they have tried to develop fully integrated CMOS thermoelectric generators, but the internal resistance those transducers are offering is way higher than conventional and thin film transducers. It is up to 1.5 gigaohms. So that is a so this so if you are if you are trying to design an energy harvesting IC, then as I was telling you, in order to extract maximum power from the transducers, you should really worry about matching the impedance of your circuit, I mean harvester system, with the internal impedance of the transducer itself. So if you have to match that, then you have to see what is the internal resistance of the transducer that you are planning to use. So in that case, if you design a harvester circuit which can work with conventional TEG, which is having an internal impedance of 0.5 ohms, it cannot definitely work with the CMOS based TEG transducer, which is having 1.5 gigaohms of internal impedance. So, so the wide range of internal resistances that are seen in the market available TEGs or the research level TEG transducers available, that is another critical issue that energy harvesting IC designer should be focusing on. And as the case goes with the internal resistance, the same goes with the open circuit voltage that the transducer is providing. Like if it is 2.4 millivolt per Kelvin per centimeter square for conventional TEG, it is 12.5 volt for Kelvin per centimeter square for CMOS TEG. So as you can see, if we prefer to go for a higher voltage transducers anyway, because anyway, if we have a higher voltage, it is easier to get to the level of voltage that we need to power up our electronic devices. Apart from this inbuilt or manufacturer level issues of TEG, if we are talking about operational issues of using a TEG, or the if you are exposing the TEG to an environment where the temperature varies very huge. Like if you say about the human body heat harvesting, it doesn't vary much, because the human body heat doesn't vary drastically, and not even the ambience at which the human body is present that also is not supposed to vary much. But if you're talking about harvesting energy from waste heat that is generated from furnaces or machineries, from industries, they can vary very widely. And if you are exposing the transducer to such high temporal fluctuations, then the performance of the transducer can vary, which will already we have seen that the energy efficiency of the transducer is around 10% or so, or even lesser than that. And if you are again providing putting the transducer in a temporal fluctuating environment, then the efficiency still varies. And again, that again comes on the energy harvesting circuit designer to cope up with this loss in efficiency or variation in efficiency, to be the job of the circuit to manage the variations in the input. Now we were telling that the transducer has a very low output voltage. So one way that one way that we can think of, or one way the researchers have found out to better make a better use of the transducer, is to connect the transducer in series. So if we connect the transducers in series, and if we and all of the transducers are seeing same temperature difference between I mean in between their plates, then you will get the total voltage of that series connected array will be higher than that of a single transducer. And in that way you can make use of the TEG to get a higher voltage, and hence make a better use of it. But the problem is when you connect them in series, there will be mismatches between the temperature difference that they are seeing, and hence the voltage that is generated among as in series of the, or as an output of the series of this array, that will also vary. And there will be crosstalk between the transducers, which will again reduce the efficiency of the transducer. So these all are the main critical things. If you see TEG as a, from the TEG transducer perspective, if you see, these are the problems that as a designer you should be worried about. Now this is a general architecture of a thermal energy harvesting system. So this is similar to the general energy harvesting system that we have seen before. So here we have at the input we have a TEG, or thermoelectric generator, whose electrical equivalent is a voltage source in series with the input impedance of which is mentioned as RTEG. And we have a converter, or the energy harvesting IC itself, and inside the IC we have a power converter, which is a DC-DC converter, because the voltage or the type of transducer here we have is DC. The voltage, the power that is coming out of the TEG is of DC type. It gives a constant voltage which doesn't vary with time, and we have a constant current coming in. So for this converter, we need to have a controller which generates the clock signals that are needed for the switched mode converter. So here we may have charge pump based converters or inductor based converters. In either case, we need clock signals to drive the converter. So we need a controller that will generate the clock as required. So the way the clocks are generated is not the same for all the converters. It is not the same for all the operational or all the applications. It differs with what is the voltage level that you need, what is the frequency at which you want the converter to operate, whether it is a uh, uh, highly varying type of input, or if it is a the current, if you want, if you have a higher current or you have a higher input voltage, and what is the type of load that you're using. So depending upon all those things, the type of clocks that you need to generate to control the converter also varies. So taking all those things into consideration, you will come to a architecture of the controller on, like, what is the what at what frequency, on what pulse width you will generate the clock. So to give you some idea, the clock that can be generated, you can be functioning in either PFM mode or PWM mode, pulse frequency modulation, or pulse width modulation mode. There are also other techniques like pulse skipping modulation. So it is up to the IC designer to choose from which of the modulation techniques you want to be with your harvester, depending upon what is your application and what is the type of source that you are targeting. So here we have inside the controller, we have the maximum power point tracker. So initially I was in just 3-4 slides before, I was mentioning about the need for maximum power point extraction. So as the temperature difference changes, so it is not only with the thermal energy harvesting. For any energy harvesting system, you have to always ensure that your harvesting system is in the maximum power point. So what is a maximum power point? Maximum power point is a point at which the effective impedance that the transducer sees is equal to the internal impedance of the transducer itself. So in case of thermoelectric transducer, it is the internal impedance, I mean the electrical equivalent circuit looks very simple. It is having just a voltage source in series with a resistor. But for the solar and piezo and RF, it's not the electrical equivalent. If you want to model the transducer in terms of electrical elements, it's not that simple. So in this case, we can say that if this node sees a impedance which is same as RTEG, then we can say that. So then the input voltage will be VOC by 2. If it sees VOC by 2, we can say that the maximum power is extracted from the transducer. So the functioning of the maximum power point tracker ensures that the input voltage is maintained at VOC by 2. So for that, we will be we can change either the frequency of operation, the pulse width of the clock, or we can skip the clock. All these things we can try. There are so many techniques that people use to have the maximum power point tracking. So the some techniques to mention are fractional open circuit voltaging, then fractional short circuit technique, then fixed frequency technique, hill climbing methods, perturb and observe method. These are all different algorithms that people use to ensure maximum power point tracking. And the functioning of the cold startup, we have already seen what is the functioning of a cold startup system. So the cold startup system, if you see internally, that is also essentially a smaller converter itself. I mean, a smaller form of the entire converter, but it will not be of the same form. And the efficiency of this small harvester doesn't matter. What is made, what is the important point for a cold startup system if you see from a thermal energy harvesting perspective, is from how minimum voltage that the operation can be started. The people have reported up to from 5 millivolt or 6 millivolt, even 10 millivolt, the operation will start. The researchers have come up with devices that can start operation from that, the voltages as low as 5 to 10 millivolts. So that is the functioning of the cold startup system. And for the switch gate controller, we have peak current controller, zero current switching circuit. So I'll give you a glimpse of what these circuits will do in the upcoming slides. And we have auxiliary circuits like oscillators and reference generators, for which aids in the operation of the circuits that are operating as part of the main converter system. Then we have in the power converter mode, we have a regulator system. So the regulator system can be a different type of converter. Maybe the charger is a DC-DC converter, a switched mode converter like boost converter or a buck converter, and the regulator can be another switched mode converter like buck converter, or it can be LDO type of regulator. So so it depends on what kind of application or what kind of power level that you are, what is the conversion ratio of your input to output, or depending upon all that, you will decide what is the charger structure, what is the type of converter that you want to use as charger, what is the type of converter that you want to use as regulator sort of. And at the output, we have this R load is obviously the it depicts the wireless sensor node or the IoT device that we are talking about. So it needs a constant voltage, and the load, the current that it draws varies. If you see an IoT node which is having a power profile as we have seen before with sleep mode, active mode, and transmission mode kind of loads, if the IoT node is having, then the current drawn from the system will vary depending upon what mode the device is working on. So so we have this C store capacitor at the output, which is acting as a buffer to the load that is being powered from the energy harvesting system. So here I have not shown the intermediate power storage device. We will have mostly all the energy harvesting systems will be having an intermediate power storage device which functions to store the extra energy whenever the energy available is more than what the load requires, so that it can be used whenever this input is not not having enough energy or enough power to support the load requirement. So for that, we will have an intermediate energy storage element as well uh, in most of the energy harvesting systems. So I think, Partha, can we have a break now and continue the session after 5 minutes or so? Hello? Hello? Partha or Vasu, anybody available? Hello?
Ma'am, I'm contacting Vasbabu sir. 1 minute, madam.
Okay.
Vasbabu sir.
Hello, madam.
Hello,
Hello,
Vasu.
Priya, madam.
Yeah, hello, Vasu. Can we have a break now
Hello.
and continue the session after an hour?
Hello, madam.
Hello?
Priya, madam.
Yeah, I can
Madam,
hear you.
take a uh, can you take a break, madam?
Yeah, we can have a break of 5 minutes or whatever time you mention, and we can
You
restart after that.
tell 5 minutes or 10 minutes, madam.
We can have a 10-minute session break and then we'll continue. Now it is
Okay.
2:50, 2:58, right?
258, madam. 310.
Yeah, 3:10 we'll start the session again.
Okay, madam.
Okay, thank you.
Uh, all the participants take a 10 minutes break. Madam will join after 10 minutes. సార్ పార్దు సార్ మేడం తర్వాత వస్తున్నారు, బ్రేక్ తీసుకున్నారు. పార్దు సార్ పార్దు
చెప్పు వాసు.
మేడం ఒక 10 minutes బ్రేక్ తీసుకున్నారు, 3:10కి వస్తారు, మళ్ళీ జాయిన్ అవుతారు.
ఓకే, థ్యాంక్ యూ.
హలో హలో సార్, వాసుబాబు సార్. హలో హలో
చెప్పండి సార్. శ్రీనివాస్
సార్,
గారు.
ఏం లేదు సార్. సార్ ఫీడ్బ్యాక్లో ఐడి నంబర్ అని అడుగుతున్నారు సార్. అది నాకు ఐడి నంబర్ అంటే కరెక్ట్ క్లారిటీ లేదు సార్, అందువల్ల అనేసి.
ఓకే.
ఓకే,
Yeah,
వాట్
well,
ఐ హావ్ టు రైట్ ఇన్ ఐడి నంబర్ సార్?
I will check and tell you, sir.
ఎందుకంటే నేను ఫీడ్బ్యాక్ ఫామ్స్లో చూసినప్పుడు దే ఆర్ ఆస్కింగ్ ఫర్ యువర్ ఐడి నంబర్ అన్నారు.
మేము వాట్సాప్ గ్రూప్లో టోటల్ 110 పార్టిసిపెంట్స్ ఉన్నారు సార్. 110 పార్టిసిపెంట్స్కి ఐడి నెంబర్ ఇచ్చాము
సార్. నాకు వాట్సాప్, అవునా సార్, వాట్సాప్ గ్రూప్లో నేను మెంబర్ కాలేదు, నేను జాయిన్ కాలేదు, అదే నాకు రాలేదు.
సార్ మీ మెయిల్ ఐడి చాట్ బాక్స్లో పెడితే నేను ఫార్వర్డ్ చేస్తాను సార్.
మా మెయిల్ ఐడి సార్. ఓకే సార్,
మెయిల్ ఐడి పైన ఇక్కడ పైన చాట్ బాక్స్లో
పెడతాను ఇప్పుడే పెడుతున్నాను సార్. జస్ట్ అదే నాకు వాట్సాప్ ఇదేం రాలేదు, అందువల్ల డౌట్ వచ్చింది. ఓకే,
అదే వాట్సాప్ లేదనుకుంటా మీకైతే, లేకపోతే
అవును సార్, వాట్సాప్ నాకు రాలేదు సార్ మెసేజ్ ఏది. సార్ నేను పెడుతున్నా సార్ ఇప్పుడే. ఓకే, మెయిల్ ఐడి. ఓకే, థ్యాంక్ యూ.
మెసేజ్ పెట్టండి, నేను షేర్ చేస్తానండి.
ఓకే, థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్.
Hello, Vasu. Can we start the session?
Yes, ma'am. Please
Okay.
start, ma'am.
Okay. The screen is visible, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Screen is visible, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Partha.
Thank you.
So if anyone have any queries or questions or doubts for the session that we have done already, you can ask or
Ma'am.
yeah.
Yeah. This is already like TED talk to me.
Okay. Okay.
But my question may be irrelevant. Like, suppose I'm using GPUs, graphical processing units.
Okay.
Like a lot of heat is generated. Like IoTs are there are in 3 different modes, like sleep mode.
Correct.
Yeah, but if we consider such kind of high computing processors, the heat is continuously generated.
Yes.
Is there any research going on in harvesting that kind of energy? That's my point. That is.
Yeah. Of course, this. I mean, that kind. Really, there is no market available solution yet for harvesting that particular thing, or there is no system that is available in the market that does that. But
Okay.
definitely, we can do that. People have surveyed on how much heat is generated due to the processor, and how, because that energy, that temperature difference is almost constant, right? Once the
Yes.
processor heats up, there is no variation like what will happen in the ambience. There will be a lot of variation in the temperature, but with respect to processor, if you see, that is a constant temperature uh, that is there, that is present for the transducer to harvest. So definitely that will be a good source of heat that we can make use of to harvest energy, and people have are making use of that. But the point is, the catch here is, if you see wherever the processor works, right, there you have already a source of power,
Yeah.
higher source of power available.
Yeah.
We are talking about applications or scenarios where we don't have that source of power nearby. So there we can definitely make use of ambient energy to harvest and power up electronic devices. So if you suppose if you are talking about in a lab or wherever the processor is running, there
Okay.
it may not be very attractive because already we have a higher source of power nearby. Then
Yeah.
why will we worry about harvesting this waste heat?
Okay.
So
Perhaps my thought was like it can be used for charging power banks, like that. Whenever.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether I mean that kind of power level you can get from
Generate. Okay.
this TEGs, because charging a power bank also you need 12 volt, and
Okay.
the current consumed will be also more, right?
Okay.
So that level of power we can't. We are not talking about that level of power. But in industry they have high very big units. They those are not integrated circuits. Harvesting systems are not integrated circuits.
Yeah. Okay.
They have discrete PCB boards. They have big harvesting boards. They have where they harvest this high temperature or thermal energy that is coming out of the furnaces or machineries. There they have big converters that are present on the board, which harvests energy, and with that they operate also some sensors.
Okay.
So that is there, and as you have pointed out, it is a very good thought that you gave, like from the processors we can
Yeah.
harvest.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
query.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Please proceed, ma'am.
Yeah. So, so we were in this slide where we were talking about the power converters and the controllers that are used for generating the clocks that is required for the converter. So here in this particular design example that I'm providing you, we have used a boost converter. So most of you might be aware of what is a boost converter. So the boost converter is a DC to DC converter, which we use to get a higher voltage from a lower input voltage. So output voltage will be higher than the input voltage by a given conversion ratio. So if you see basically the circuit of boost converter, it looks like this. It has an inductor. It has two switches, which is one is an NMOS switch and one is a PMOS switch. Sometimes you can see a diode also here instead of a PMOS switch. So the basic working of a boost converter is initially this switch, the high side switch or the PMOS side switch will be off. The NMOS switch will be on. So the input voltage will be so once initially when this switch is on, the inductor will see an input voltage of V in across it, and so at that time it charges the current through the inductor increases, or it has a positive slope. And when in the next phase, this switch will be off, the NMOS switch will be off, and the PMOS switch will be on. At that time, V out will be always higher for a boost converter. So V out minus V in will be the voltage that the inductor will be seeing. So that is a higher voltage than whatever it was seeing now. So if you see V in minus V out, now the inductor sees a negative voltage across it, so the inductor changes the current direction and it will have a negative slope. So in that way, this is the one cycle of operation that it will be seeing. Same is depicted here. So this the green one shows the waveform of the NMOS switch, and the red graph shows the waveform of the PMOS switch clock. So it is on for so NMOS switch is on for this period of time t on, and then it goes off. When it goes off, this PMOS becomes on, and when it is on, the inductor has a negative slope, and when the NMOS is on, it has a positive slope. So we have the input. So this is the I peak voltage. I peak current that the inductor waveform is having a peak current of I peak, and the average current that the inductor is seeing, or which that is the input current of the boost converter itself, is I in. So this is the basic operation of the boost converter. So here the Rin that we will be so this is the transducer, and the Rin is the effective impedance that we'll be seeing at the input of the boost converter. So this is what is inside this power converter block, and next we will see what is inside this controller block. So inside the controller block, basically we need a clock generation. So for clock generation, we need, as I told you, we need an algorithm which will track the MPPT as the input voltage is varying. And we have this cold startup block. So we have to take care of the transition between the startup mode and the main converter mode. So for that, we need some control. We need we need separate control for the NMOS switching and the PMOS switching. So for all these controls, we will need an algorithm which can be implemented either in digital or analog. And if let's say if you want to have a sequential programming kind of controller operation, then you can go for a digital implementation where you will write a state machine, or you will write a procedural kind of operation, and you can always do this implementation in HDL, and you can carry on with the digital flow, and you can implement it as the digital part of the IC. And wherever you have this oscillator, reference generators, and the converter, if you are using a converter, you need gate buffer, and all those stuffs will be the analog circuits that you will be designing. So as you see, as a whole, you will have the controller will be a mix of analog and mixed digital signal design, and this other circuits like auxiliary circuits and other converter related circuits will be in analog. So this is an example of a controller where you have mixed signal design. So the state machine and the maximum power point tracking algorithm will be having a digital implementation, and the other like IP controller, oscillator, frequency modulation, PFM modulation block, bias generator, regulation control, all these things will be implemented in analog. So you can see that it's an example of a mixed signal design that you are using for designing of an energy harvesting system. So here, so going into the design example exactly. So what we were trying to design is an energy harvesting system which is having a single stage of energy conversion. In the previous diagrams, in the general architecture diagrams, you would have noticed that we have charger and regulator. That is the conventional design of a converter for energy harvesting system. So in our design, we propose to have a single stage which can do both charging and regulation. In such cases where there is no shortage of power in the ambience that compared to the requirement of the load. So this is like this is something something related to the algorithm or the technique that we were trying to prove. I'll not go into the details of the algorithm because it will be irrelevant. So essentially what happens is according to our technique, what happens is as the frequency of the harvesting system is constant, but as the load is increasing, at the peak load, we are ensuring that maximum power is extracted always from the input. So at maximum load, the frequency is optimal, and in the other times when the load is lesser, what happens is the energy harvesting or extraction happens, and whenever the load gets sufficient power or sufficient voltage, when it reaches to a sufficient voltage, in this case it is 1 volt, the load requirement, we have considered the spec as 1 volt as the output voltage. So whenever the output voltage reaches 1 volt, we stop the extraction or we stop the charging, and the converter is switched off. So that is the basic thing that is going on inside this IC. So these are some calculations related to the technique that we have proposed. So here is the system architecture of the system or the IC that is designed. So as you can see, whatever is mentioned inside the box is on chip. Those were all integrated inside the IC. So we have a feedback regulation module which regulates the output voltage VCAP to 1 volt. And inside the feedback regulation module, we have a reference voltage generator, which is BGR, band gap reference voltage generator, that is implemented. We have a comparator which compares a ratio of VCAP with the reference voltage to tell the converter whether to operate or not operate. Once it crosses 1 volt, then the feedback regulation module tells the converter to stop the operation or stop generating the clock signals, so that it waits for the load to take the current and the drop to happen at the VCAP. Once it drops below VCAP, again the feedback regulation module enables the clock and the harvesting happens. So that's the functioning of the feedback regulation module. And why we need a gate buffer here is the PMOS and NMOS switches that we are talking about are the power switches, because it's a power converter. So these are power switches and they will be very of large size. So in order to prevent the output of the feedback regulation module getting loaded, we use gate buffers to provide the clock to the big power switches. And we have a zero current switching module. So this feedback regulation module is what controls the clock N, which is the control signal for the NMOS switch. And for the PMOS switch, the control is generated by the zero current switching module. So here the basic idea is that we need always the current to flow from the input, from the inductor, from the input to the inductor, and from the inductor to the output. We don't want any backflow of current. So we always ensure that once VCAP becomes more than VSW, this node, we have to stop, we have to close the switch. So this we have to open the switch. So to control that, we have this zero current switching module. So inside the zero current switching module, we have a pulse width modulator. So this modulates the whenever the VTEG changes, the input voltage changes, the time for which the VSW will be more than VCAP will be different. So what the zero current switching module does is it will have a gradual tracking of what is the ideal on time that SP should be having, so that there is no backflow of current. So for that we have a comparator which compares the either the drain and source of this SP PMOS switch. So it compares a VSW and VCAP, and whenever VCAP goes more than VSW, the comparator trips, and it will enable a counter to start counting. So based on the operation of the counter, the pulse width is modulated with the help of a digitally controlled delay. So I'll explain how how this digitally controlled delay is designed. So here we have this digitally controlled delay element. So this is basically it is a current starved inverter type of operation we are talking about. So here we have the main inverter. Here the clock signal comes in, and uh, when the when this inverter, this M6 and M7 forms the inverter basically. So when this node trips, decides what is the pulse width of the output. So when this will trip depends upon the resistance offered by the pull down network, which is decided by this M9, M10, M11 and M7 together. So what should be the voltage at M9 at the gate of M9, M10, M11 is controlled by this I control. So I control is in turn controlled by the switches which is present at this which is controlled by the control signals A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, D is the output from a 4-bit counter. So depending upon the combination of the output of the counter, like if 0 1 1 is there, then depending upon that we can we know that this M1, M2, M3, M4 will be either on or off. So depending upon which all MOSFETs are on, the current I control varies, and if there is more current flowing, then M9, M10, M11 will be having a higher voltage at its gate, so they will have a lesser resistance. So in that way, the inverter will trip faster, then the pulse width will be smaller. If I control is less, the operation happens vice versa, and correspondingly the pulse width changes. So here, as you can see, um, this is the overall block. So this digitally controlled delay element, this whole circuit is depicted by this box there here, and we have an inverted buffer which gives inverted clock n. So what happens is, this is the clock n which is used for controlling the NMOS switch. We have this inverted clock, and we have this delayed clock which is the output of the digitally controlled delay element. And if you do an AND operation of these both, you will get a pulse width which is varied depending upon this falling time of the fall time of this clock ND. This fall time, how it should vary, is what is controlled by this I control, and this I control is in turn controlled by the digital output of the counter, and the counter output is decided by the voltage voltage difference between VSW and VCAP. So this is how the basic operation of the zero current switching is happening. So here, this is uh, the fabricated IC, the micro photograph of the implemented IC that is having this particular architecture. This was fabricated in 2016 in UMC 180 nanometer technology. So you can see the regulation module with the reference voltage generator is here, and we have the counter here. We have the boost converter switches and drivers inside. But the inductor that you can see in this boost converter will be outside the chip, because the inductor that we will be using for these applications will be in the range of microhenries, which are really large inductors that cannot be integrated into the IC. So the boost converter inductor will be always outside the IC. So here you can't see the inductor inside the chip, it is outside the chip. So this is the test PCB that was developed for testing this particular IC. So as you can see, the first yellow box shows the shows our chip, which is the thermal energy harvester, and this second yellow box shows the inductor that is placed outside and is connected to the input of the boost converter. Now, this is the test setup that was used for testing this particular thermal energy harvester. So we used a function generator. There was no oscillator inside for the clock generation for this particular design. So we are using a function generator to generate the clock required for the boost converter. We are giving for that to the DUT or our chip that is modulated. The pulse frequency, this pulse skipping modulation is the technique that is being used here. So the pulse skipping modulation algorithm is done by the controller inside. So that and it has the SMD components are this one is the inductor, and another is this input capacitor, another is this output capacitor. These are the other components outside the chip that is needed to for the operation of this IC. And for the load, we are using a Keithley SMU, source measurement unit, as the load, because we want to, it is in the lab, it's difficult to measure with different loads effectively, to change the output load effectively. So we are using a Keithley source measuring unit as the load, as an emulated load. So here we can see the measurement results. This is the line regulation and load regulation results you can see. So we can see that when the input, the VTEG, the below graph shows what is the VTEG or the input voltage. It is around 50 millivolt, and it rose to 200 millivolt around. So here, so from 25 millivolt to 200 millivolt, when the input changed for a load of 100 kilo ohms, we can see that the output voltage was still regulated to 1 volt. In the second load regulation graph, you can see that when the load was changed from 100 kilo ohms to 1 kilo ohms, that is from the minimum load to maximum load, we can see that at the maximum load, the voltage, the input voltage went to VOC by 2, which is the MPP maximum power point, and still the output voltage was regulated to 1 volt. So this is the frequency variation that you can see as the load is varying. So this is for a maximum load, the first figure. Then the second figure shows it is for the light load. And in the last figure, we can see that there is a frequency variation that is happening when you are dynamically changing the load from 100 kilo ohms to 1 kilo ohms. This was for an input voltage of 210 millivolt. And this particular design was for a transducer which is having an internal impedance of 5 ohms. So this is just to give you an idea of how good the design was. So we got an efficiency of around 74%, around 400 millivolt input, and we got power of around 1 milliwatt as output, which was sufficient enough to drive IoT nodes that we were talking in the beginning of the session. So for completing the talk, I will just present one application case study that we had done as part of the testing that we did for the chip that we fabricated. So what we did is we emulated the power profile of an IoT node, which can work with body heat to as a health monitor device. So what we did is so these are the numbers that we discussed in the beginning. Like these were the parts that we used whose power profile fits for making an IoT node. So we created a power profile like this, where the sleep mode power is 600 microamps, 10 microamps. The active mode is 600 microamps, and the transmission mode power is 7.3 milliamps. So for, let's say, if I want to operate this IoT node for 1 second, For 1 second transmission, 9 seconds sleep, and for 10 millisecond it will be for 10 millisecond, for every 10 millisecond it will transmit. So if this is the power profile of the IoT node, we wanted to know whether it can harvest energy from our body and do this transmission process or not. So what we did is, since the IoT nodes that were available in the market was needed a voltage of 1.8 volt or more, we couldn't use a real-time IoT node that was available from the market. So what we did is we used a Keithley source measurement unit, and we programmed the SMU for the power profile that is shown here. That is, it will take current as you need, like this. You can set the time, and you can tell how much current it should draw, and you can set the voltage. So the voltage was set to 1 volt, and the current that it should draw is given as in these, according to these numbers, and with this given time period. So this is our load in this particular measurement setup. This is our load, and we checked whether it can power the system or not. So we successfully we did the measurement, and we were able to give that much power as required by the load. And the source that we used was for this, as Partha was asking before, can we harvest power from the processors? These Keithley source measurement units itself were generating so much heat that we were not able to stand beside them and do the measurement. So we thought, why don't we use this heat itself to power this thing? So we kept the transducer, the TEG transducer, the white color transducer that I showed you before, upon these instruments, and we were getting voltages of around 100 millivolt to 200 millivolt, and we used that voltage to harvest energy and power this device, which we were successfully able to do. We also tried to keep the transducer on our hand and on the wrist, and tried to power. So at that time, it was not able to transmit it. We were not getting enough power for transmission, but the active and sleep modes were functioning well enough. So this is the other thermal energy harvesting designs that we developed in our lab under the guidance of Dr. Gajendranath Chaudhary. So this is the first chip is what we discussed now, whose working I explained you. The other chip is implementing a novel maximum power point tracking algorithm. It also has a novel startup technique that we have implemented. We have fabricated this design in TSMC 180 nanometer. We have the fabrication is complete, and we have received the chip, and the testing of this chip is ongoing. So these are the things that I wanted to share with you. So if you have any queries, we can have a 10 or 15-minute session for answering that. Thank you. Vasu, do we have any query sessions?
Yeah. Dear participants, do you have any questions? You may interact with the resource person. Anything?
Yeah, not related to the presentation. If you have any concerns regarding the IC design, I may not be the best person, but I can help you out with whatever I know. If you need any information or resources or resource links or anything? I think I ended the session too early.
No, not like that, madam. But it's not time, but it is the content.
Okay.
Content is already,
Okay.
as I mentioned, it is. Yeah, it's a complete package you have presented. Energy harvesting is a buzz topic.
Yeah.
But in general public domain, it will be discussed at macro level.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, correct.
using like turbines, wind turbines, some
Yes,
natural
yes.
resources they will be using. But
Yeah.
as academicians or researchers, you came forward to do your pursuing research in this field at micro level. It itself is a big challenge. You took up and you achieved, and that is
Thank
much
you.
appreciating.
Thank you. So nice of you. Actually, in our research lab under Dr. Gajendra sir, I'm not sure whether he mentioned yesterday in his session. We have researchers who has done research on solar energy harvesting and vibration and RF2.
Okay.
So even Gajendra sir has done his PhD thesis on developing energy harvesting systems which work for micro level of harvesting.
Okay. Yeah, participants, if you don't have any questions.
If later also, if anybody is having any query or questions, you can always email me or Gajendra sir directly. If you want to share anything or if you want to interact for more information, you can always do that. I think Vasu or someone will be having
Yeah.
our email IDs already.
Yes, ma'am.
Please
We are
feel
having
free
this.
to uh, have to get any info from us. Okay, so I think we can wind up, right?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, let me, dear participants, we are a very in-depth thank to Priya ma'am for sharing her knowledge while she is pursuing and she is about to present some more about this during her voice. She is very generous in sharing all these things to us, and I hope people will dare to take such topics later on. If you share the same to your students or anybody, pursue the career in, or pursue their research in the fields like this, emerging fields like these things. Thank you, madam, for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
thank you. Yeah,
thank you, Pata.
thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Thank you,
Thank you,
participants.
participants. Yeah,
Bye.
you please leave, ma'am. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
సార్ పాదు సార్ రికార్డింగ్ స్టాప్ చేయనా
రికార్డింగ్
స్టాప్ చేయమంటారా
చేసే
ఓకే